Hello, hi, welcome to Lola Loves Reading. It's been a while, but I'm happy to be here with you guys. Your girl has been keeping her cortisol low and getting her reading on as usual. Today we will be doing something a little different. This video is the first of its kind on my humble channel, but I couldn't miss the opportunity while it's still fresh. So here we go. Wuthering Heights, the movie Thots versus the actual novel. Spoiler warning, I will be going in, so if you haven't seen the movie and or haven't read the book and you hate spoilers, this video probably isn't for you right now. Anywho, first of all, Wuthering Heights is one of my favorite books. I love reading it around Christmas because the goth vibes offset the seasonal Mariah Carey defrosting nicely. This is a book I know quite well. Every time I read it, I come away with something deeper, and I recommend everyone read it at least once to see what all the fuss is about. Wuthering Heights, the novel, is, in my opinion, one of the earliest examples of a psychological horror in novel form. It is not a romance in the sense of the romantic movement or even the general concept, but if your flavor of romance is the most toxic trauma bond you can imagine, then okay. It takes all kinds, or so they say. I did a whole separate review and commentary of Wuthering Heights as a novel. You can find the link to that video below, but basically, this book is a lot. It's dense and intense and full of delicious toxicity that makes it superbly human. But it is a cautionary tale, not aspirational, nor is it a delicious, fluffy confection. Quite the opposite. So, how does Emerald Fennell's film version of dramatic quotes, Wuthering Heights, compare? Well, let's put it this way. For the fans, Emerald Fennell interpreting Wuthering Heights, it's like the way M. Night Shyamalan interpreted Avatar: The Last Airbender. You know the kombucha girl? That was me, the entire screening, which means I thought I was gonna be a hater, but I'm kinda not. Kinda. Hear me out. I went into this movie with an open mind. I was not prepared for a 2.5 hour film that could have definitely been 1.5 hours, but I digress. I'm familiar with Emerald Fennell's work, so I knew it was going to be quite stylized. I enjoyed Saltburn, so I had an idea of what to expect, and it was a lot less corny than I was expecting in the overall interpretation. And in my most bare bones assessment, it felt like a very pared down version of a very big story. It was very stylish over substance. They took away a lot of the nuance of the overall novel and created this Danielle Steele fantasy, skin-toned walls, interesting costume choices, beguiling lighting, and set design. And I don't see a lot of people talking about the actual acting. Jacob Elordi is like the it guy actor of the moment, and I can definitely commend him for his efforts. His casting was controversial because he is neither black nor Romani, which Heathcliff is supposed to be interpreted as possibly either. But he tanned up for the role and it was fine. He can act, so it's frustrating. I think he was directed into the way he acted Heathcliff because he brought this lost puppy gentleness to the character that is not at all book Heathcliff. It was giving lover boy, lost in the sauce, daddy dom, yearning forever, fundamentally a completely different character than the vengeful, twisted, hateful, spiteful, broken Heathcliff in the novel. Margot Robbie's Kathy wasn't bad. Fans of the book weren't co-signing her casting because she's quote unquote too conventionally pretty or quote unquote too old to be Catherine Earnshaw. I will say for me, her portrayal was not nearly wild-spirited enough. No amount of stomping around and acting like a brat brought out the raw intensity of the character of Catherine Earnshaw. I needed more. I needed not just brat summer, but unhinged, more tastic realness. And though I am a Barbie girl and Barbie can technically be anything, Margot Robbie fell short for me. I will say the breakout character for me was up and coming adjacent Irish actress Alison Oliver as Isabella Linton. Emerald Fennell borrowed her from Saltburn, and her acting has been very strong right out the gate. The unhingedness that we should have seen from the character of Catherine Earnshaw was poured entirely onto this interpretation of Isabella. Isabella, who in the novel brought naivete and upper-class sophistication, whose soft and untainted heart fell victim to Heathcliff's designs, was completely reworked for this film. In Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, Isabella is masochistic, obsessive, unnerved, and all too eager to break out of the gilded cage she's been born into. Also, a weird choice that diverts from the novel was making Isabella Edgar Linton's ward and not his sister. To me, it was pointless and stupid. Like, why? Everyone is already assuming she's your sister. Why make it this awkward gray area on purpose? It didn't add any value one way or the other to the story. It just felt like a weird choice. But back to Isabella. From the beginning of the film, when she makes Kathy's acquaintance, she's a jealous mess. Fine. I don't think that's terribly off from book Isabella. But then the obsession sets in. Heathcliff comes back. Kathy is obviously jarred. Isabella notices, and Isabella sets her sights on Heathcliff. In the piece de resistance, a scene at Wuthering Heights where a now married Isabella and Heathcliff are casually doing pet play, which Isabella seems to be very much into. Novel purists hated this scene, but I, controversially, I'm sure, was very much shook in a good way. To me, this was a visual representation of Isabella's feelings and her relationship with Heathcliff. On her knees, chained to the fireplace, Heathcliff stroking her head, and her being totally pleased with herself. To me, the most interesting scene in the entire film. To me, this was a valid artistic choice that didn't taint anything about the original story. Something I didn't care for at all, which I'm sure would make the book talk girlies absolutely riot if the film were without, was the sex scenes. Yes, there was a lot of sex. Yes, it was very horny. Subjectively, I thought it was attractive and stylized and spicy. Two of Hollywood's most powerful people getting all saucy in a carriage on a table in the moors, on and on, sure, okay. However, in the novel, the whole point of the frustration and rage is the societal, social, sexual, mental, emotional blockade between Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff. It hurts so bad because they can't even really touch. The sexual suppression specifically on Kathy's part, because she's a lady, and the time period and the implication of impurity in a social and societal context drives the pressure cooker of feelings between herself and Heathcliff. They barely embrace in the novel, much less come into any other sort of physical contact. The yearning yearns. Apart from that, another interesting choice was the complete wiping of the storyline after Kathy dies. I suppose for validity of making this into a romantic fantasy, this makes sense. Thus the quotations of Wuthering Heights, because yeah. In the novel, Hindley, Catherine's brother, is the actual abuser, not Kathy's father, as in the film. Kathy's father is written in the book as a kind, naive sort of man. He brings Heathcliff as a foundling into the household, protects him as a sort of son, and is kind to him. Hindley, Mr. Earnshaw's only son, young, vain, proud, and entitled, is the villain. Hindley's abuse contributes greatly into making Heathcliff the trauma-driven monster he later becomes. Taking Hindley out of the story was weak sauce for me, because I enjoyed the implications of his character and what it causes for the entire story. Being as the quote-unquote love story between Kathy and Heathcliff ends with Kathy's death, I suppose Emerald Fennell didn't feel it was necessary to put in the rest of the story, but basically they all have kids. Kathy had her daughter before she passed away. Heathcliff has a son with Isabella named Linton, who is sickly and who he despises. And Hindley has a son named Hareton with his wife before she dies, not long after, which causes Hindley to spiral out and neglect his son. Heathcliff's vengeance, fired up from Kathy's death, extends to the lives of the children. You'll have to read the novel yourself to get into the meat and potatoes of that, or check out my full review and commentary of the book in the description description below, but that's on Mary Had a Little Lamb. The last scene in the film is Kathy's death, dramatic and romantic and everything the romance girlies could ever want. It was beautifully filmed, but it lacked all of the feelings that the scene in the novel demonstrated per the situation. The sadness with the rage, the mourning with the trauma, the disbelief with anguish, the complexity and the fullness of the whole that is Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Phew, I hope this wasn't too here and there for you guys, but I just had to get some of that off of my chest. I want to emphasize that I actually enjoyed the film for what it was. I appreciate artistic interpretations of established works of art, and I think Emily Bronte would have watched it and been keen on it for what it was, if only for the freedom of expression of it all. Y'all take care, and I hope to see you guys sooner than later for another video. Okay, keep reading. Love you. Bye.